Okay, so I started that, and let me just go back to try to get this this file that she sent me earlier today. So she sort of helped us with a tool, and I guess I should probably send it to you, Shanna, so you can maybe take the notes in here, and then I will.
Is it the different samples you sent from yesterday?
No, this is actually a little tool that she sent us so that we can start populating it with what we need. So let me get that up.
Yep, I just,
You got it? Okay.
yeah.
And let me share it. Unless, I don't know, but I don't want to put pressure on you. That I'll let you sort of populate it on your own, and then you can Okay, does everybody see it? Let me make it a little smaller so that, I don't know why my screen is at 100 and something.
Where, okay. Where is it that I need, because I'm trying to follow along separately on the one you sent, and I need to see where I need to be. What page is it?
It's this page right here I'm showing, page 10.
Page 10, okay.
Yep. So, so you see, Simma's helped us with kind of breaking it out a little bit. And so one of the things I was thinking about, and I'd like to sort of get your opinion on, is I feel like there's 3 key time frames. Now until the plan comes out, once the plan comes out, before school opens, and then after school is open. So I feel like we need to sort of think about it in 3 separate buckets. I don't know if everybody agrees. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think there might be one, I think the middle one might need to be subdivided.
Okay.
Because there'll be an immediate release, and then there'll be a like reinforcement of protocols, I think, in that middle one.
Right. Well, I was thinking about, like, in this time frame, what are all the things we need to do? What we need to, you know, sort of, I think that each one is going to have like a series of things that we do within that time frame, sort of to your point, Helen. But I think it's sort of like, if we can think about it in those 3 buckets, it might be easier to sort of compartmentalize and say, this is what we got to get done now, next steps, and the next steps. Because I think actually what we were talking about, sort of like the example of the hotline, that's something that would be after school starts, right? And so I think those communication methods and things are going to be so different from what we're doing right now, or not. So I think that's the discussion. And then the thing is, the materials that we need to create, which, you know, what Simma has done is sort of added some of the ones that we already talked about in our key decision area. So she sort of populated that here already. And then, of course, I'm thinking about engagement. So why don't we start with thinking about what are the key messages that we need to have out before the plan release? And I know that obviously survey results is going to be the first one, right? What are some other things that we think need to be communicated before we let the plan out?
Well, I don't know if this is a message that needs to go. I'm just saying, in terms of, I'm just going to go with a specific area of partnerships. We've done, like I was telling you, Julie, I sent out a kind of a form to about 80 partners, asking them what they're currently doing with how they've pivoted their work to meet the model of closure, and then just what is their discussions moving forward in terms of how they're going to approach the next year, knowing that we don't know yet, but I just wanted to get some information about how they thought they were going to approach that new year. So in prep, I'm just trying to overall keep a good relationship and information dissemination to them. So through these channels, I've been doing that. So we could just say something of partner
updates.
Like, yeah, partner updates and information dissemination to them. So I think that's important. They need to know what's going on.
And how often do you think? Let's think about that too.
I've been doing that almost once every average of week and a half to 2 weeks, sending them stuff.
Okay.
I wonder if down under engagement efforts, we have staff and families, because we also engage partners as part of the community, if that should be an additional subgroup.
Yeah, that's good. That fits right in with that stuff.
partner/community or
Yeah,
something.
Slash
just thinking
community,
about that
because
too.
again, you reach out to civic associations, to, you know, all that kind of thing as well. Under key messaging for now till August the 6th, I think we need to basically say to our community, we heard you in the community chats. And so I think that has to be a message, and then how we're going to be using that feedback that we got from the community chats, I think that's going to be essential to close that loop. And then,
So Helen, do you think that maybe with that kind of update, we can say, we heard you, thank you, and here's the FAQs that we promised? Maybe it's sort of like that follow-up, like what questions we didn't get to, here's the FAQ and the link to that or whatever.
right, yeah, absolutely. And then, yeah, absolutely, we would always put the FAQ into the other questions, but I think it's more than that. I think it's like, how is the information that you share with us actually or is being used? How is it informing the plan? And I think that's something that we haven't yet addressed actually with our community. I think that's something we still need to really like address with them. And then I think the other thing in terms of key messaging is, you know, that like the board update next week, that we promised them a board update next Wednesday. That's what we put in our timeline. And now we have the scheduling guidance. So the scheduling guidance is going to be a part of that key messaging. What are we potentially, you know, able to do, and what are we looking at?
Yeah, the scheduling. Hi guys, it's Sema. I think
Hello,
one thing that would be really important around the scheduling guidance is we asked families a initial, what is hybrid, like how does hybrid sit with you, how does virtual sit with you? And now we're going to have a lot more data or not data, guidance around what exactly is included in hybrid and what are the services that'll be provided in virtual. So that as that information comes out, I think building out family focused views of that scheduling guidance will be key. I can share with you guys some thing links. Do you guys ever use thing links?
I don't.
Okay, I'll pull some in, and then maybe I can share my screen real quick, or I can actually link them in below, some different like family focused views of the schedule guidance.
In terms of scheduling, are we also considering maybe sort of potentially doing the sort of upper grades, like, you know, high school, middle school, virtual, and elementary younger kids? Maybe is that one of the hybrid options? Because I think that's something that we talk of hybrid, we talk of virtual, but is there a third option or a fourth option, you know? And is that in the scheduling guidance?
So hybrid and virtual refer to the number of days that students and teachers will be in buildings. Who attends those days, and that's like the phasing of it, who attends those days is another decision that would happen afterwards, and that who would be informed a little bit by data and capacity. So we can have more people attend for 2 days, or maybe like there's actually also an option which we haven't been talking about, which is 4 days, which would be for some special populations as deemed necessary. So it would be who would qualify for each of those. Sometimes it could be a family opting into 100% virtual. It could be a family opting into 2 days in person, and it could be either a family. It's usually not a family opting in, but it would be a selection of students to be in the building for greater than 2 days in person.
Then I think we also need to be clear in our messaging that you know, if we're offering a hybrid option, that doesn't mean that you are going to get 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And that this is not a categorical, you are definitely going to get, if we're saying hybrid is 2 days, you're going to get 2 days. You might get 0 days, you know, and
Right.
that's just that we need to be really clear that this is what it actually means to our families and could mean to our families. I think we don't want to overpromise.
Thank you, Helen. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing this morning, looking at some of the plans of some of our surrounding divisions, and when their hybrid plans have been put out, it might be hybrid for grades 1, grades 5, and grades 9 that are attending on campus. And so all the other grades are still virtual. So if our parents currently are hearing virtual versus hybrid, they might think what you're saying, that if I select hybrid, that's K through 12, which is misleading or could be misleading.
Yes,
So
and like Delana put in the chat as well, that it, you know, it might mean that you know, it's not for anybody, basically.
I was just going to suggest that because this is such a fluid topic that we may want to just sort of, I mean, scheduling is sort of the message, and then what that looks like, you know, is because it's so complicated. And because we sort of are short on time, I was hoping to sort of do a check-in, but I don't think we're going to be able to do that on what we heard when we were sort of peppered in different groups on Monday. But I think in the interest of time, we won't do that, and maybe we can just sort of, if you have some thoughts, why don't you just add them to the chat on things that you heard about on Monday that you thought either were interesting, concerning, or whatever. So do you think we've sort of hit on all the key messages that we need to have from now until August 6th? Yeah. What about after the plan?
Actually, hang on, sorry, Julia, there might be one more. And that is, when are we, because we originally said we were going to be asking families to commit before August the 4th, because on August the 4th, we need to share with the board an update. So basically it's that commitment. Are we still asking? I don't know if we are. Are we asking them to commit in the same way that Fairfax asked them to commit? If we are, that has to be in that bucket of key messaging.
Yeah, you're right. So that's supposed to be next week, right? Some of the enrollment period. No, we're not doing that now.
It's the week after.
The week
after.
27th. I'm sorry, that's what I meant. The 27th, right?
We made we are going to reevaluate that on Monday, depending on how Arlington's, seems like all of the divisions are falling right now in whatever they have asked of their staff and students, and they're all changing their mind right now. So we don't want to get caught in a moment where we're asking people to commit to something when we're noticing that absolutely everything is changing. So that is a conversation we figured we would have after the board meeting on Friday. Let's see how the board reacts to the different schedules. Let's see if there's any other divisions with new information. And then on Monday, we will make a decision on whether or not we're asking for enrollment for the following week.
Could I just go back to something that Helen said about the hybrid and what hybrid actually means? I'm wondering if there's not a better term that we could come up with than hybrid, because hybrid has now been associated with sort of this, 2 days in, 2 days at, at home, whatever. And I'm wondering if there's something that's more descriptive, like phasing in, or just something other than the word hybrid, just because I think hybrid has sort of now gotten in people's consciousness as a certain model, and it just might be good to disconnect from that assumption.
Melinda, I think that's great, but I think what we do is we stick with what hybrid means right now, what fully virtual means right now, because I think that what we'll end up with is probably a different model, and we then brand our model with what we're going to call it, or what we're going to need it to be, like this. I don't know. And we don't use the term hybrid because it's not be hybrid for everybody at that point.
Right.
I feel like these are standard terms right now that are kind of pretty comprehensive, that people understand. Hybrid means a mix of half and half, or something like that. Virtual is fully virtual, okay? And then, but when we come to do ours, we should look at what it really means and not use maybe those standard terms, but rebrand it in a way that is like Alexandria, our way, our model, like we did with summer learning, summer learning for all. It's like, what is our model? Do you see what I mean? Does that work? Does that make sense?
I would like to just add from our Monday meeting something that came out in regards to communications. And Helen, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think it's, relevant to state at this point that they were suggesting that it's not the way we're communicating it as a hybrid or virtual isn't maybe accurate, because it's really a hybrid and virtual, because we're going to have to pivot possibly at any point and go virtual, even if we're hybrid. So just food for thought.
Definitely. I think our goal when we were saying the word two models was to keep it really simple and high level at that point. And then there are going to be complexities and subtleties, but I want to have something to bounce off from before you start building in those.
Absolutely.
The real meaning, the real, what it means for all of our families. But yeah, absolutely.
So we have about 27 minutes left before I want to just be mindful that we have a lot to cover, and we haven't really delved into the timeline obviously is the most important thing. So let's continue working on that at least for the next 10 minutes. So for the next phase, after the plan is released, what do you think are the key messages that we need to get out at that point?
Here's what the process is. Here's what the protocols are, the processes are, and we're going to walk you through step by step. And you have to break that down. It can't be one big chunk of information. It has to be broken down. Here's how to ride a bus. Here's what it's going to look like to when you first walk into a school and where you're going to put your bag. Here's how your day is going to look like.
Helen, if you click into the sample arrival information or the sample classroom info, just as a quick guide, you'll see that I will pull other examples, but here's what one of our other clients is putting together to communicate this out.
Can everyone see it?
And this is translated in multiple languages too.
Yeah, can you share that link with me on email, please, Sima? Because I actually want to share that with Susan, who is already thinking about how we're going to have to like package the instruction content protocols.
You got it.
All right. And then I was also thinking about that too. And I guess this is probably in your other think link. So is it sort of exhibiting like what a possible classroom would look like? I know Sema had to leave for a second, so she's not gonna answer that question. But
I like that last one. That was good. Let's
Yeah.
do this one.
Huh. Interesting. Just gonna.
They don't look 6 feet apart.
No, not at all. I was thinking the same thing. It kind of surprised me when I saw it. Like the desks don't even look 6 feet apart. But anyway, we'll make sure.
I think these are great models. I think that when we communicate this out, you have to have multiple tools. So you'll need like a video that you can actually watch that walks you through the process. You'll need maybe a click screen like this.
Right.
You'll need written instruction to people that really need the verbal. You'll need, maybe a sort of a little audio of like walking somebody. I don't know. It'll be almost like, we're going to need to be really creative in packaging the same content, but in multiple ways. Obviously, multiple languages too, but multiple ways, I think.
Yeah, if I can add,
reinforce it.
If I can add to that, I think this is an area that kind of concerns me because I know some of the families that we work with may not be utilizing technology as much. So these really cool features where you can have an interactive classroom and see what it's going to look like. Although it may work for some populations, we're still going to be missing a big part. So one of the conversations that I've been having when the decision is made, is there any way that we can utilize like on the ground grassroots information dispensation, like through like when they're passing out food in these communities, we're also passing out information about what back to school is going to look like. Because again, I'm just concerned that we're still going to be missing, and what you're saying is completely right about the multiple modes of just, sharing this information. But somehow, if we can really do grassroots efforts as well, I think that would be important.
Yeah, Eden, I could not agree more. However, what I am going to say is, initially, the food access points were our go-to for that grassroots communication. The problem is you've got paper, you're handing out, you're asking our staff to do stuff that is different, additional, potentially not hygienic within that environment. So we actually got stopped from doing that because of the hygiene and the cleanliness issues, which I completely agree with. I think there's some risks involved with that. So yes, we have to look at that and we have to be creative on it, but I don't know what that looks like right now. We looked at yard signs. Is it yard signs that go up? But yard signs have to go in individual personal things, given the cities now, they changed their rules about 3 years ago. So you know, you can't put them on public property anymore. You can put them in front of a school, but that's not really going to be getting us too much traction. So we're trying to look at creative ways to do this, but you're a little limited. If you can come up with some for us, perfect. We're open to ideas and suggestions.
Do we have the ability to mail?
We've been mailing, but the mailers, so we've mailed 3 times, I think, Delana, she's on the call, but I think we're 3 times now. We have done, we do print mailers and we translate them to make sure the critical information goes to all our families. What I will say is it's heinously expensive. So it costs us around 7 to sometimes 10,000 to do that mailer each time. So it's not something that we can be sending out every week. It's something that we have to press pause on, think when is our critical timing for it, and these points are probably our critical timing on the screen right now, particularly August 7th and in the run up to September 8th. It'll probably need 2 more mailers.
What about the way that newspaper publications distribute large bulk papers to apartment buildings where we know like we have a large number of families? If we could do that throughout the city, that may be more costly, and then there's not individual handling.
Also, the messaging that's going out needs to be family friendly. Sending information, it's great, but if it's not family friendly and we overload families with information, they don't get the message. Also, videos, text messaging, all that stuff seems to be the preferred method of communication for many of the EL families as well.
Yeah, but I hear what Eden's saying, that it's not just that, because there's a lot of families
Exactly.
that aren't receiving that information.
Yeah, it's just that when we send the information, make sure it's not a guide with 150,000 pages, that in one page we can convey the information and have them contact somebody so they can actually explain if they don't understand it. But sending guides or sending, 7 or 8 pages really doesn't do any good.
No, we agree it should be a 1 page, and honestly a short 1 page too, because a 1 page letter still isn't read to the end. We find that our families read the top 3 paragraphs of anything. After that, you are done. So really you want to make anything 3 short paragraphs, which is really postcard. But if you're putting on a postcard, then you have a link to something else, and you're asking people to access technology, which is not really the right way to do it. So I think the answer to this is that we have to just find multiple ways so that people have access to maybe get a little bit or a lot, or and know where they can potentially find more. But we're going to have to be very creative about this.
I just noticed that Kurt actually had the same suggestion I was about to make, that can we just make a series of infographics, keeping healthy at school, 1 infographic. The other infographic could be, how do you say hello to your friends, like elbow bumps or whatever, like different things that we know social life and student life is going to be a big concern. How do you work with your teachers? What is your classroom going to look like? Those kinds of things. Maybe it's like a little series of like picture infographics, so they're sort of more visual rather than a lot of verbiage. And so that way people can follow them, even to Krishna's point, if they're more visual than necessarily reading a lot of verbiage. And then maybe accompanied by a couple of videos, not a ton of them because we don't have time, but some key ones, especially around health and safety, and how to manage being in school. I think it's sort of like a whole series on that. So maybe that's what we should do.
Absolutely. And I think when we're thinking videos, we're thinking more about the ones that we shared around around washing hands, where it's an info video. It's not a video. It's like she puts together slide, like almost like a quick PowerPoint for 20 seconds. So it's like an infomercial, basically. This is what you need to do to stay safe from coronavirus. That's what we did initially. I think those are the ones that they're great on social media because they act like a video, so they get a lot of pickup. But more than image, for example. So yes, a mixture, definitely both.
So we have about 2 minutes left, and we haven't necessarily finished populating this section, and we haven't gotten to after September 8th. So I'm wondering then, we have a lot to put into this timeline, but the timeline is the most important piece to me, I think, that sort of drives everything else. So can we spend the rest of our time talking about the timeline, and then can I enlist your help in filling out the other pieces? I just sent the link in the chat. I can also email it as well, but I just sent it to you now, of this chart, because it's the ongoing our ongoing workbook, which you've had from before. Someone just added this into here yesterday. And so can we do some work on this by Friday on your own time? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let's finish up with, so you agree timeline, we should continue to work on that for the rest of the time? Yes. Okay. So anything else for the August 7th through September 7th? And I'm going to ask you guys to just raise your hand when you want to talk, because it's just hard for me to see who wants to talk because my screen is smaller since I'm sharing. So if you could just raise your hand, that'll help. Anything else between that time frame? Kurt?
When you ask us to put our thoughts in here, are you going to share this document, or are we just going to email you what we think?
Yeah,
Like,
I sent it in the chat, but this is our work group that we've been working on for,
oh, it's in the workbook?
but I just sent it again in the chat, so just so you
Oh,
have
okay.
it. Yeah.
I didn't know it was in there. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, and then I saw Shanna, you have a question?
Yes, I was going to say, at the same point that we are prior to school providing information on what school's going to look like, it's also the child care options that will be available through our partners, however that's going to look. As you know, we've started discussing that with our partners, and so we're going to want to put that information out to families who are going to have to go to work and need that safety net.
When do you think that information is going to be available?
I mean, unfortunately, the thing is, we're not going to be able to truly determine how we're going to do it until the press release and the information is shared, right? And then partners, we can be working together. So it'll be before September 7th. I just don't think it'll be ready on August 7th. So
Okay.
I still think it falls in that timeline.
Okay, so at some point, probably later in August, we'd have to communicate to families that, depending on what we decide, how they're going to deal with it. Okay. Helen, you have your hands raised?
So I just put two things in the chat very quickly. Personal schedules, you're going to need to let a child know exactly what they're doing on what day and at what time they're meant to be expected. And the second thing is before care and aftercare options. Are we running them? What do they look like? Are there any like rec program options, essential workers? I know that, for example, one of our staff members has young kids in the essential care program right now for city workers. Are there options like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, Eden?
Yeah, I was going to say this notion about allowing families to feel like they're heard and giving them the space to ask questions and providing a frequently asked question section is, I think, something that should continue throughout this whole process, both August and September, after school is starting as well. So, yeah.
Have we thought about a hotline of some sort for people to get immediate responses and answers to issues that pop up as we begin the implementation? I think that's important.
I think we talked about that. And one of the things we talked about was that it would be active once school opened. But I guess what you're suggesting is that we have it open in August. So while people are sort of navigating and trying to figure out what they're going to do next.
I think there's going to be as many questions then, or a number of questions then too, yes.
Yeah, and that John's right. And so that's a funding issue again, because, you know, we've got these employees that are currently doing the hotline that don't start back up until a certain date, or are going to have to take additional contract hours to just handle the load that's currently. So we even had a thought process of who do we add into these hotline support, you know, who could potentially from a building level staff help us with this hotline, because right now we've just got, you know, our parent liaisons handling it basically, right?
So when would those staff come back? Is it August 24th or 31st? When would we be able to count on that help? And if not, then do we need to figure out who would handle that before time? Because I see Helen is suggesting that we have the hotline from August 7th once the plan comes out to September 15th, so we can address questions. So I see your hand raised, John, but Krishna had her hand raised first. So I'll go to her first and then I'll come to you.
So it is a funding issue. We actually we have 2 staff that are part-time, 20 hours, and they are right now functioning with money from a grant that Kurt got. But also we need to sort of have a system, right? Because they won't have the answer. So basically what we're doing right now is connecting them. So for example, the registration, they send it from the 14th to the 15th, and they have different steps and they have changed. So we have a person in that department that is handling that. But again, it got to be some sort of system because they won't be able to handle it.
So this is
with the
one of the
amount
things, this is one of the things that I had mentioned last time. And if we can create sort of a little team, I don't know who that would be. Kurt, you can sort of tell me, but a small team to basically put a proposal together, what that would look like. And then I'm going to talk with HR because there's plenty of people that are home getting paid and they can help.
Right.
I
I
mean,
agree.
we need to enlist their help. And if we are good about sharing information with them and scripts and all that stuff, so we'll have to do sort of that preparation work and maybe a training or whatever, but we need to start using some of the staff that are, you know, at home that can't, that, you know, and if we had to equip them with a phone, that's what we would do, whatever we need to do. So we have to sort of, this is a piece that I think we need to start working on now, so we have it in place for them. Because whether we go virtual or hybrid, we still have to have information, right? And so like that hotline, so we should.
The only challenge is you've got such a limited amount of people that speak in Arabic as staff members that then you have to start to think about contractually, or I don't know how that works, but that's the only rub. The Spanish speaking, the English, I think we could add some people into that for sure. It's just we have to figure out a plan, but I'll work with a couple team members and see what we can come up with.
I
Yeah,
see.
I think,
John.
yeah, I think a couple others have alluded to this, but a lot of the calls are going to go to the school. I mean, even a month ago, I remember talking with excuse the dogs in the background. Remember a month ago talking with someone at central office saying, right now, if school numbers are called, I don't know that anybody's answering. It should be forwarded to someone and someone should answer. We need to have these provide the support at the individual schools because they're going to get most of the calls once this gets going, short of issues like transportation, registration, things of that sort.
I think we can definitely equip them with the information, but I think they're going to be handling a lot of other things. So we may want to ask them to either, you know, instead of just telling somebody to call another line, that they transfer to us or something so that it's sort of like a handoff and it's not just like oh, I can't answer your question, call this number. You know, we don't want that either, right? So, and unfortunately we won't be able to police that, but we can try to help them to not do that. But I think to Kurt's point about the other languages, can those staff, even if they don't speak those languages, can we then give them access to the language line so that way they can work with the families anyway? Because I just think that we need to use the bodies we have instead of, you know, to Christian's point, we don't have an endless pocket, you know, but we have people that are getting a paycheck that, you know, could be helping us. So I'm going to sort of enlist your help with that, Kurt, to work with your team or whoever you need. I mean, I'm happy to help too, to think through the hotline piece and then a proposal so that I can get to HR and see what we can do and who we can enlist help with. And then thinking about John's point, how do we also equip the schools with the same information at the same time? Helen?
And to John's point, could we work now to make sure that every phone is forwarded to a person from a school? That is where we're getting a lot of complaints, you know.
Who would we check with on that? Who's the czar on that?
IT, HR. I don't know whether it's something that HR needs to actually approve, that we are allowed, you know, are asking our admin teams to do that and take those calls. I don't know, Julia. Maybe you start with HR and then help desk can definitely implement.
Right. I know that we had I know in Arlington, that was one of the first things we did. We made everybody switch their, you know, transfer their phones because phones weren't.
I wish that happened. We asked for that to happen. Instead, we got like a lot of messages of people just saying schools are closed. I'm like, what? They're not closed.
Yeah, I know. That's why we were like, wait a second, wait. We had the same crazy stuff happening, and we were getting all these reports, and we're like, oh, and especially, of course, they love going to the school board with these reports, so we had to immediately address it. Okay, let me find out.
This is Krishna. I just want to let you know that I tried at the beginning when we started doing the parent info line, when they started, I reached out to, for example, support services, and I asked Marcia, Dr. Jackson, like, we really need your help. We need to have a contact person. I don't know how many times I've been told that they cannot make their employees use their personal cell phone number, because we even send voice, the Google Voice. They have said, no, we cannot make them. Izora from the satellite told me the same thing. So it is something that we will have to work with HR definitely to find out how they're going to make it sort of like everybody have to have a method, giving them phone. But also HR did not have a list by languages from staff, and they also did not have a complete list of support staff or paraprofessionals that we could use at the time. So
this is what I was addressing earlier, Krishna, is that if we enlist the help of other staff, we will need to provide them with phones and technology. So that's why I was saying we got to sort of put a whole plan together, a proposal of people and the resources that they're going to need to actually pull it off. And so if we have that together, then I can take that to the next step and see how we can make that work. But that's absolutely, we cannot ask people to use their personal phones. That's impossible. And
I have on my budget, because we pay for the parent liaisons. So on that end, I can give sort of an estimate how much we pay from my team.
Okay. So moving on to, I think we are pretty tight with August 7th through September 7th. Let's take the last few minutes to think about after. And then in the materials that so thinking about this, I know that there was a possible move to do first aid packets online, but has that been sort of circumvented, Helen, with this process, or are we definitely doing the first aid packet online at this point?
Are doing the first aid packet, what we call a welcome packet, that'll go in English online, okay, only in English online. There will be an option to do it in Spanish online as well. However, anyone with a preferred language in PowerSchool will get it mailed out to them in that language.
Okay.
So they've told, because we need to make sure we're still getting to the families who may not, have their communication any other way.
So what is the deadline?
We can't do Arabic and Amharic online. We just don't have that ability on the forms.
What is the deadline for having that packet, all the pieces that go into that packet? Because I'm thinking that could be another avenue for us getting some information out. And so I know that you're probably well underway, but I'm just thinking about some key pieces that we might want to include and what would be the absolute deadline for that.
Right. So we are minimizing what we're sending in that packet this year for the first time. We're no longer sending the family handbook in any format. That's going to be online, and the code of conduct is also going to be online on a platform. The information that will go out is forms primarily. Delana, are you still on this call?
Yeah, sorry, I'm
en
route to the dentist in the middle of DC here. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, so basically, yes, for Spanish, Amharic, Arabic, it's only forms, because yes, any kind of handbooks that we provide, the code of conduct definitely, and then as far as the family handbook or some sort of reopening handbook, whatever that becomes, because quite a bit of the information is very irrelevant in these times, those handbooks all go online, and we'll provide those on in an online format in all 4 languages. But the rest of it, it's all forms that you have to provide. So I would either will be mailing out, or if students will be in buildings in some format in some way, then we will be we can potentially pass them out. But yeah, so as far as getting stuff to the printer, I mean, we have to pull data. That's the thing, is because we personalize that information on the intro page, and that's sort of the rub right there, right? It's like, what day do you feel like we have good enough data in our system of enrolled students to be able to send out this information?
This year it won't be until after August the 14th, Elena.
Right.
I think you're going to be wanting to pull once we've released that final plan, and once we have an idea of like what enrollment is going to look like. I also want to say, so add in the farm form, we include the farm application form.
Well, so here's the thing, is the farm form, I sort of still have that with an asterisk, because if we're doing I personally still think potentially that could go out along with the nutrition calendar, which, I mean, they're intending on printing. I think that just keeps it nice and separate, but it could be included with the, I made that suggestion to nutrition, and I haven't heard back yet. So, you know, that could go either way. But I mean, you know, there's only one form in this so-called welcome packet. There's only one form, the top form, that we pre-fill with information. So, you know, if we pull data on, say, August 14th, 15th, 16th, something like that, and then they pull together the packets, the rest of the stuff they can just print out and have ready.
So
it'll be much less of a big haul as it usually is. Usually we get this stuff off to the printer in July, but because we're not doing English, or we have to do limited in English, you know, just in case, it'll be much less of a haul for them. But
So
if we're mailing, then it's going to be super expensive.
So I just wanted to add one thing about farm, and I know you said you haven't heard back from them, but I would nudge them, because I know there's a lot of guidelines in terms of when like forms have to go out in the first day packet for farm. Like there's some rules around that with the USDA. The other piece of it too, what I first thought about when you started talking about this, is that those forms need to be returned to the school by like, I think like October 20th or some random date. And so I wonder if there's any change to that, because if we're not going to be doing any in-person feeding, then I wonder if they can extend that time, or we may want to think about that with our messaging in terms of like, when's the actual date that people, you know, the federal government hasn't been exactly friendly and helpful, so they might keep the deadline, and then that's going to be stressful about getting our families to fill those out in time to make sure that they get their farm letters, because when people are back at school, we need to have those letters to be able to feed kids. So just a thought. Helen, you have a question?
Right. So so the farm forms, I understand, have to come back for a certain time. That's fine. But honestly, people fill those forms out in one go. They tend to sit down and do them in one go and send them at one time. And for us, it's contact data. If you haven't got that contact data up to date, particularly at a time now when we're not seeing kids face to face, then we're not going to be able to communicate with them. Phone numbers change all the time with our community for text purposes. They don't often, you know, this is critical to us to make sure that we are current and that back.
And I think that's where I mean, I could tell you that when we went to the online verification last year, the biggest criticism we got was with the farm forms, because then people just felt like they didn't know where to send them, they didn't know where to call. So I'm just sort of pointing that out, as if there's changes, we definitely need to be aware of what those changes are. And then I know that we have to send them out with the first day pack, with the welcome packet, I'm pretty sure with a rule, because we had that issue last year. So just when you said that, Delana, it just sent off alarms in my head. I'm like, oh, we got to make sure we're in compliance.
Yeah,
that's
Can we add that to our list of communications for messaging for August the 7th bucket?
So we have 3 minutes left, and we've done a lot with the timeline. We definitely have a lot of materials. You know, there's a lot of information here. I think where we sort of have the most holes is in the engagement portion. So I don't know if the FACE team wants to have a sort of a separate little meeting this week and sort of fill this in, because you guys are sort of the experts in this area, and then you can share it with us and we can add to it. And then if Helen, you and your team want to sort of take the materials piece, make sure that everything is there. I wanted to make sure we all sort of, you know, talked about the timeline. And then of course, if there's things that we didn't add to the timeline, if we can add that, let's say by Friday, because I want to make sure that we sort of are tight with this, so that we can share some of our plans next week around our plans for communication. So does that work for everybody?
It does. Could you just share the workbook link with everyone again, please, Julia, just as a request?
I sent it in the chat. It's
Oh, you
probably
did?
the very beginning. Yeah, but you actually have it from before. It's the same workbook, but I did send it. And if you need me to send it again, I'm happy to do it. But so 2 minutes we have left. Anything that what do we want to accomplish next week? Let's talk about that really quick so that way I know how to plan. What do you think we haven't done or that we need to sort of focus on in order to be able to finish this up? Oh, Shanna?
I would just suggest that we start looking at these things that we are saying over here in the first column that we need to be doing. If you scroll up, I don't have the ability to scroll up on the screen you're sharing.
Sure. Sorry.
Just to the top there of, right there, materials to create the processes. And I did start to drop in, if you see over there, just some messages for, key messages for September 8 onward. But the processes, these are things that we need to be doing now. And I think we need to come up with how we're doing those things and really start working on them.
Okay, so maybe creating some owners for each of these pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask who can take that on, create maybe a spreadsheet or something that we sort of have the materials and who's owning it. And that way we can sort of decide on how we're going to move forward that next week. Who wants to take that on?
I can drop them into a spreadsheet.
Okay.
And it's just kind of like you're wanting me to create like a time and task line frame.
Yeah, so we know who's
okay.
when it needs to be done. Yep.
Okay.
I saw that Krishna, you had your hand raised. You wanted to share something?
I'm just wondering, do we have to add how we're going to make sure that staff knows about the messaging and about, the pre-planned release and all those things? So when families approach them or call them, we all have the same message and the same information?
Yeah, I would imagine that we would be sharing the same information on Insider that we do in Express. But I guess what you're basically saying, if I'm not mistaken, is that it needs to be a little more tailored for staff so they know how to sort of share that information. So it looks like Helen has an answer to that.
Yeah, very quickly. So it's the same process that we use for registration and kindergarten registration. Any form registration changes where basically registrars or whoever's going to be frontline gets talking points and almost like an FAQ in a handbook so that they know exactly what they're doing and how they're answering things and what's expected of them. So we can work on that.
And I put that over here, third bullet from the bottom in the processes is developing or maybe just reviewing if we already have a system for maintaining information flow for the triage teams and the individual schools and staff.
So we're 1 minute over time. If anybody has anything burning that we think we need to talk about for next week, if not, then we will work offline and try to get this populated. And then, there's another section on here that we'll have to work on next week. I'm going to show it to you. It actually sort of looks at what you were just talking about, Shanna. So maybe this is what we use. So
yeah, I can populate it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So hearing no extra comments, thank you guys so much for this morning and for continuing the work, and especially with the chats. I know a lot of people have been working behind the scenes and so on and so forth. And so I hope that you'll join us next week for certain portions of it. So thanks for that. And I hope you have a great rest of the day. I'm sure I'll be seeing some of you later. Bye.
Thank you.